a few others joined, so just to repeat, the presentation will take around 30 minutes, just about a 30-minute lecture, and then we will go into our Q&A. Okay, so this is all about sacrifice, the teaching of sacrifice, which most of you know about already. It might be new to some of you, but we'll see it here with some new insights, hopefully, for you. And there should be something new for everyone. And it just so happens this is a very relevant presentation for this time of December and Christmas, where we're all very involved with families and friendships, being generous, helping others, giving to others. There's a very funny quote that comes to mind, which relates to the lecture. I think Ram Dass said it. It's, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. So I hope you'll get deeper understanding about that from listening to this by the end of the presentation. So, what is sacrifice? Many of you know about this idea, but mostly it's an idea to us in the beginning and not a lived reality. When it does become a lived reality, then we know what it is, right? Beyond the concept, beyond intellectual reasoning, just as it is for most spiritual teachings or things that we believe we should do or that we intellectually understand. As a reminder, this aspect of sacrifice is integral to the awakening of consciousness. It's something that's fundamental, or you could say crucial. So we cannot awaken our consciousness if we are not in some way comprehending and living this aspect. And it's usually more difficult to understand compared to the two other aspects of the three factors of awakening consciousness, which we'll see later. And the reason why it takes time to understand is because the mystical aspect of comprehending it is found in the fact that it is based in love. And while we have the ego, we do not understand love, true love, divine love. Some of us may feel we know it or have experienced it in glimpses of our lives. We know it to certain degrees, but just as there are infinite degrees of consciousness and humanity is generally near the bottom, there are infinite degrees of love too. But generally we have a lot of confusion in terms of that concept. So the mind does not know how to love. It only knows it as a concept. It would be more accurate to say that our blood knows love, our heart knows love, or at least has the potentiality for it. The higher consciousness holds the truth of love beyond human understanding. It originates from beyond the human level. So my point here in saying this is that first we have to have a part of us that understands that we don't fully understand sacrifice yet. We can't just say, sacrifice is just helping others. It's just teaching gnosis, doing good deeds. I can see in the chat there, that it's just maybe investment for longer-term benefits, something like that, right? Sure, it's all of those things, but it's so much more. And depending on how deep we can look, determines how deep we can comprehend it. So sacrifice is something that we need to proactively understand through practice, right? As practitioners, as, if we are people who say we are interested in spirituality, we should be practicing spirituality, right? Authentic spirituality. And sacrifice, when we are really practicing it, the effect of it goes very deep. It's not just about helping others, right? There is an element of it that awakens our consciousness. And that's profound. It's not just, okay, doing good deeds and I receive good dharma in return. It awakens our consciousness, right? In a sense, you could say, right, when we help others, we are in turn also helped internally. So we hear the phrase a lot here, a sacrifice for humanity, right? Many times. But let us understand this deeper. What exactly are we sacrificing? And what exactly is humanity? What do we mean by this word humanity? I want to answer these questions in a more metaphysical manner. So as you know, we have to work on dissolving the ego to be free of it. This is essentially the primary thing that we are sacrificing. Once we learn how to sacrifice that, then external, outward sacrifice for others is natural. But first, we have to really learn how to sacrifice the ego in terms of dissolving it, letting go of it, surrendering it, killing it, dissolving it, however way you want to say it. Don't get confused with words and the idea of words. There is a reality behind these words. It's just that a lot of people get confused or they react because they haven't experienced the death of almost any type of ego, because they haven't generated the strength to work against themselves, to conquer themselves, to deny their self. We need to be free from the ego and learn how to do that directly. To free our true nature from the mechanicity of dreaming consciousness. Okay, we want to be awake. Now, I want to pose a question. I want you to ask yourself this question. Can I kill the ego just because I want to? Can I kill the ego just because I want to do it for myself, based on my own spiritual desire to be liberated? Is it possible? What do you think? Maybe? To a degree? Perhaps? Right? I'm not going to give you the answer to that. It's just something for you to reflect on, to feel out. But I hope that you at least see that generally on a deeper level, the psychological work cannot be done without a sense of sacrifice. So during our inner work, we have to constantly reevaluate and ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Especially at times when we feel we are failing or we are really sleeping and dreaming too much. We have to ask, what really were my motives? Were they based in these desires for myself, right? And ask ourselves, am I just doing it for myself? And why? Because in a sense, that sounds a little selfish, right? To awaken just for yourself. How does that work? Can we awaken just for ourselves? If we awaken just within ourselves, then are we not just still stuck within ourselves? The idea is to break free, right? And there is a greater reality a reality of unity beyond the self. Okay. So what is the opposite of sacrifice? We can say that the opposite of sacrifice is selfishness, self-centeredness, self-consideration, being involved in oneself, etc. In simple, esoteric terms, sacrifice is the Christ and selfishness is the ego. If we want liberation, we have to find a way to want it for others. This is basic cause and effect. What you create within you will come back to you. If we hold division and conflict within us, we will see that reflected in our life. If we hold unity and a sense of love for others, then we'll experience that too. So take note, I said you have to find a way to want it for others. I didn't say you must do it, right? Oh, just do it. Find a way to, want love and live. I'm not like forcing you to love others and telling you to just do it and go and sacrifice, right? In order to genuinely want liberation for others, for humanity, you have to love others. And loving others cannot be forced. It's not a forceful thing, right? Love is not violent. It's not mechanical. It's not of the intellect. As if we can just study gnosis, it tells us to love others, and so we do. No, it's not that simple. You as an individual in your own journey have to find the right reasons and values in your own experience, in your own heart, to hold this sense of love for humanity. Not sentimental love, not egoic love, not an idea of love, but actual love. Altruistic love that can appear from self-realization and deep meditation. It's not blind love. We don't just do it because we believe or because of a sense of morality. It is natural from understanding. It's realized love. And in a higher sense, love is a magical force. Magical in the sense that it is beyond the mind and derives from divinity. And so, how can we work with that and generate that magically somehow? Well, as you can see on the presentation, in order to do that, one of the most potent tools is to work with sexual magic. The teachings on alchemy and transmutation give us the necessary solar force to connect to the higher forces of love. The solar force, which originates from the absolute. Just as we have the sun in our solar system, that light, the light that we have physically, contains within its atoms, the higher forces of what we call love. Not human understanding of love, but the inherent light. Light in the full sense of the word. So, the teachings on transmutation and alchemy help us to generate this light. It is also the light of, or connects to, activating the Divine Mother, Kundalini, who helps us to, when we do this, it helps us to regain the strength to love. In a sense, she is love, a love that can be raised according to the merits of our heart, according to our efforts. And in terms of alchemy, in particular, the psychological work is significantly intensified in marriage. Even couples who have nothing to do with spiritual knowledge, but have been married happily for many years, know that it takes a lot of inner work to be in a long and happy marriage. So, if you can't live with someone happily and love them, sacrifice for them, how can you love all of humanity? If we cannot die for the one that we love, how could we die for humanity? Right? We're not saying to literally die for humanity, but if it came to it, right? What kind of virtues and values do you hold as an individual? So the marriage, particularly the sacred marriage involving alchemy, forms our foundation for love. Not just the force of it, but our values and virtues of it, to which then becomes naturally applied to humanity. Creatively, because the creative energy is gathered. A couple in alchemy is like Shiva and Parvati, like in the image with if you look at Shiva's head, it's like overflowing waters of love radiating from the crown and being a source of love for others naturally, from their being. They are a divine couple doing the deeper psychosexual work together, right? Meaning they're doing the inner work, the psychological work, but at a much more difficult and deeper level, really getting out all the muck energetically deep within the soul which connects to the primordial life force essence which animates not just you, your body, but your soul. The life force essence is an infinite source of divine energy. So I hope some of you also see here that you may be beginning to see the beautiful interweaving of the three factors and how they relate to each other, right? Remember the three factors: the death of ego, the transmutation and alchemy, or the birth of the higher bodies of consciousness, the solar bodies, and sacrifice for humanity. And these three aspects of awakening consciousness are interweaved. They're not just in different orders, but they have to be all practiced simultaneously in different ways. In order to help others, we have to help ourselves. To help ourselves, we have to die internally. To die internally, we have to help others, right? To do all of that, we have to love. To love others, we have to sacrifice the ego, which stops us from experiencing love. So in the beginning, many students, I think, get confused or worry about how they should do the third factor of sacrifice. There's no point worrying about that, because the first and foremost best sacrifice we can do in the beginning is first on ourselves. The very act of psychological death is already a great sacrifice, a great dharma, a great deed for humanity. You might not see why or how immediately, but truly, dying to your egos will stop a lot of mistakes later in life, because you have dissolved the hidden causes of them internally. And you also create yourself into someone who you're meant to be. You become an expression of your being. Most students don't understand this because they're not truly excelling in the death of their ego yet. Death of ego is not something you can try to do or do it lightly. No, you have to do it fully. Deny yourself. Full fire. It's not moderate. It's not half-hearted. If it is done like that, the ego always comes back. If there is any hint of a lack of firmness in one's approach, the ego will always find a way to come back and keep us sleeping. So, to go into another dimension of this, the macrocosm is a reflection of the microcosm. And to be a little reflective here, to try and portray the significance of this. Whoever you are, here and now, listening to this, whatever egos and essence you carry inside you at this moment affects humanity accordingly. You are affecting the world right now. You are contributing. You are energy. You have certain vibrations internally which uphold the world as it is according to your internal values, beliefs, actions, etc. You contribute in that way already, just by being alive on this planet. Now, if you take responsibility and change, truly change internally, you begin to align yourself with a new world, a different world, a world based on the revolution of our consciousness, a world that is in alignment with the current waves of the age of Aquarius that's already begun. If we remain mechanical, dreaming, we live in the old world internally, a world that is already dead. It's not dying, it's dead. We just don't see it. We're living in an illusion of the physical world. It's a bit like the Matrix, where Neo is seemingly living in an alive world, right? But when Morpheus takes him to see the actual current state of the world has already ended, and it's an apocalypse. It's really, in the astral light, it's exactly the same thing already. We just don't see it. Now, we can reflect on this quote that Master Samael says in various parts of his work. When an inferior law is transcended by a superior law, the superior law washes away the inferior law. So apply this to your level of being, and you'll see how your life transforms. Many people don't understand, or they seem to get discouraged about change. They don't believe they can change because they're still identified with the past. They don't understand that when superior laws are established internally, you literally become a new person, and it washes away the inferior laws. You truly no longer become a person who can commit negative acts or behave negatively or behave in the way that you did in the past, because you are an entirely different person with new laws within you. You become the person you're meant to be, and you wash away the egos. So change the internal values, and those values will then reflect a new life, a new way of being. The problem is that our mind, as I just said, is full of excuses. The mind does not see how it is possible. This is because we live in an illusion of the physical world, and only have physical world senses and understanding. We don't see the significance of changing in the superior dimensions first, internally. We're all connected to those dimensions internally. We're just not quite sure how to work there yet. We don't fully see how it's possible. We sense it, but we don't see it. And if we do or try, the ego quickly defends itself with doubts and confusions, skepticisms, arguments, endless questions. But we have to remember that we live in a physical world where the external does not crystallize quickly. So first, do the internal work of changing your level of being, and then, be a scientist, right? This is not blind faith. We're not giving blind teachings. Try it, experiment, right? Fight against yourself, completely deny yourself all ego, and just see what happens, right? After days, months, years, depending on your specific life, you'll see external results appear gradually. And so in terms of the work on the ego, sacrifice, all of this doesn't have to be born from planning too, right? I think at least the questions that I receive a lot, people ask about sacrifice, and they ask, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? They start dreaming about certain possibilities. It doesn't have to be from planning, right? Acts of sacrifice can come without any intellectual planning, especially when we are doing the more primary fundamental work, the psychological work internally, right? The inner work. Then sacrifice can come naturally, organically. Because when we are devoid of ego, the being radiates, your true nature radiates. And others will benefit. And others can also sense that, whether they're conscious of that or not. And at times when others are suffering or they need help, you'll do the right thing without thinking about it. Sometimes just our silent presence can be healing for others. So I put some words here that you can reflect on. But a story comes to mind. When I was 17, back then I had a lot of, my whole kind of spiritual journey began at 18. But when I was 17, I was a normal guy. But I had a lot of childhood trauma. I had a difficult life growing up. Many problems. And many people tried fixing me, lecturing me, telling me what is right and wrong, telling me what to do, but it never helped. Many people, teachers, parents, friends of parents, things like that. But I remember I met a woman once, a counselor, and I remember going into the room, and because one of my teachers sent me to this counselor. I didn't plan this. I went to class, and my teacher told me oh, you need to go to this room. I didn't even know it was a counselor. I went in. She said she's a counselor, and I can talk to her. And I didn't want to say anything. I didn't open up anything. I just sat there for a while, but there was something about her. And yeah, I just somehow opened up. But she didn't force anything from me. She just sat there in silence, mostly, and was very patient. So she was the only person at that time who just sat there, silent, with a slightly friendly smile on her face. She felt warm. And she was the only person that really listened to me once I started talking, without judgment back then. And she never added anything to what I said. And she changed my life back then by simply being in her being. I left the room, I left and continued my life, but something really changed, because it's like just being in the presence of someone's being just helps, whether we know it or not. And that's sacrifice, right? That's a good deed. So I think that's a good example of how such deeds can be natural for us. So, like I've put here, right? Ego mind usually involves something like confusion, thinking, reacting, conflict, speculating, right? But when we're in our being, our higher nature, it's without conflict. It's following one's conscience, knowing what to do the right thing in each moment, whether to speak or not to speak, whether to do something or not to do something. It has the atmosphere of enthusiasm, love, serenity, happiness, true happiness. Okay? So it's all about trusting in your being to guide you. And of course, if we want that connection to our being, well, we have to do a certain amount of inner work first, right? Because there's a big shadow in the way, in front of the sun. And we need to work through those many layers, many shadows, right? So there's this aspect we should understand, that when we want to do good deeds, it doesn't necessarily take a lot of thinking, planning, and doing, but rather it is something that comes from our being, following our heart. It can be spontaneous. Okay? So, I want to end this by answering one of the questions I mentioned at the beginning. This specific question of who is humanity? And I just want to give a very simple answer. Many people might say, okay, humanity is other people. But what is other? People who are separate from you? Let's first ask ourselves, what is ego? Ego is to be identified with something which you are not. To be identified, to believe you are something which is not you. It's to be identified with the external, which includes your person. Ego is to be identified with the false, illusory life, external life. Ego is a false sense of separation. A false sense of separation. A false sense of other. The separation from your true nature, your divine essence, your being. So other is separation. If you say that other people are separate from you, we are seeing humanity as ego. We are seeing them as separate. So there's already this division, this inherent conditioned division in our basic reasoning. You can see how deeply embedded the ego is, to see others as separate. Right? This is the reason, internal reason for all the wars, racism, all kinds of discrimination, etc. So separation equals ego. The deeper reality, the ultimate truth, is that humanity is not separate. It is not other. Humanity is a reflection of ourselves. If we want to love others, we must learn to see them, other people, as part of ourselves. Not just see them that way, but recognize them as that for ourselves, if we can, with our own efforts. Not just conceptually, just because you're hearing this, but make effort to realize that deeply. Right? So the deeper truth is, each one of us is a reflection of the entire humanity. Master Samael said in a third chamber lecture once that we students are representatives of humanity. We are the reflection of humanity. We are humanity. This applies to any ascended master you can think of too. They are representatives, cosmic representatives of humanity. If you want to master yourself, you have to ask yourself if you qualify for being a representative. Meaning, do you qualify for loving everyone without prejudice or judgment? That's very difficult. A lot of people judge others. They don't understand them. They don't fully understand human suffering. They say, oh, what about certain criminals and this and that? Well, they hold certain conflicts inside them. They hold ego. Okay. Master Jesus, for example, was only able to go through crucifixion and forgive all the sins of humanity, as it said, because he himself processed all of the sins of his own humanity within him. He put the most superior laws in place which washed them all away, and he became a Christified master, right? And his external acts were a reflection of that. So the initiate learns to love humanity by knowing himself. If he knows himself, he will know others. And to know others intimately is to know them as yourself. And to also know them as the light, also, as the divine spark, the precious essence that hides within each person. Every master or fully awakened person knows that. They are not like the rest of humanity who judges very easily and sees the bad in everyone. If we judge others, it shows that we do not know ourselves. Whenever we judge others, we are unconsciously judging a part of ourselves. Whenever we do not forgive others, we are unconsciously condemning a part of ourselves. When we see many faults in others, it means we have many faults in ourselves. When we see the best in others, those are the times we're recognizing the virtues and positive values and potential for growth within ourselves. They are the positive values that we share with other people. When we love others in this way, we connect to the Christ, a deep recognition of the unity of human consciousness, Christic love. So, the message here is to love. Love others as yourself. And that is why it's necessary to have relationships. To not be a recluse to humanity. In order that we are put into situations that show us our ego. That's why we come to this life, to live through and experience our karma. Karma is a mirror. Life is a mirror, and the best mirrors are through other people in the situations of the daily life. They show us our ego. Whenever we feel judgments, anger, irritations because of others, or we say because of others, right? But really it's because of ourselves. Whenever we experience all of that, the conflict with others, in reality, their reflection is helping us to see something in ourselves. This is why Master Samael taught the necessity of the psychological gym of life. So as he said here, without the psychological gymnasium, self-discovery is impossible. It is in the psychological gymnasium of life where we can discover ourselves. Interrelation is formidable. Undoubtedly, in relation to our relatives, with our co-workers, with friends on the street, at school, etc., the defects that we have hidden spontaneously surface. And if we are in the state of alert perception, alert novelty, then we see them as they are. Meaning, we see the reality of the ego as it is, without judgments, without confusion and conflict. But we just see it, and then we can work with it, or we can just simply deny it. And we gain strength, spiritual strength. So it's absurd, really, when you understand all this, to ever blame someone else for our negative emotions or thoughts. A person really walking the path of awakening always feels grateful when someone external has tested them in some way. This is why Master Samael said several times, he didn't just love his enemies, he adored them. Okay, so yes, that's all. To conclude, the reason why we can't love others is because of ourselves. The reason why we can't sacrifice is because of ourselves. The greatest work is in building the strength to work against the ego. If there is something in the teachings we don't quite understand yet, then we have to look within and work with the three factors. Work with the Divine Mother Kundalini, work with realizing and denying our egos, practice that, gain strength with that, understand how to do that, and do our best to help others. Over time, you'll understand all of this for yourself. It's one thing to learn from instructors or books and lectures, and another thing entirely to gain your own direct experience, your own gnosis.